I pause in front of Bella Luna, the crown jewel of Italian dining in Boston, catching my reflection in the ornate glass panels. Those very windows I once wiped down during long shifts as a teenage server 15 years ago. Today, at 33, I wasn't here to bus tables. I was the owner, or more precisely, the head of the hospitality group that had taken over the restaurant just 3 months earlier. I'm Olivia Mitchell. My family still calls me Liv, on the rare occasions they bother to reach out. Tonight, I was attending my sister Madison's birthday dinner, a yearly affair that promised a usual blend of tension, passive aggression, and strained smiles. Your usual table is ready, Ms. Mitchell. Marco, the maître d', greeted me with a knowing smirk. He was one of the few who knew about my recent acquisition. Not tonight, Marco, I replied, shaking my head gently. I'm here for the Carter party. His brow lifted slightly in surprise, but he recovered quickly, nodding. Of course. There in the main room. I adjusted the hem of my sleek black dress, Chanel, though only someone fashion-savvy would recognize it. That was my style, elegant, subtle, never showy. A sharp contrast to my sister Madison, who believed success only counted if it glittered and shouted in your face. Laughter spilled from the private dining room ahead. Through the frosted glass, Madison's voice rose above the rest, confident, dramatic, and unmistakably reminiscent of our mothers. Taking a slow breath, I pushed the door open. Oh, Liv, you actually made it. Madison's voice cut through the room, pulling all eyes toward me. She stood at the head of a long, lavishly set table, draped in a vibrant red designer gown, one that probably cost more than most people's rent. Her husband, James, lounged beside her, already looking checked out. Our parents were settled near her. Mom, polished and color-coordinated as always. Dad, feigning interest as James rattled off something about a property deal. My younger brother Tyler was there too, flanked by his wife Sophie. Around the main table were our extended relatives, uncles, aunts, and cousins, each one placed like a piece in a curated tableau of family success. Happy birthday, Madison, I said, stepping forward with a small gift bag. She leaned in, brushing my cheek with a performative air kiss as she took the bag. Thanks, darling. We've got a seat for you just over there. She pointed toward a side table near the corner of the room, a table already half filled with children. I blinked. The kids' table. I asked, my voice calm but tight. Well, she said with a laugh that rippled around the room, we had to organize seating based on, status. You get it, right? She smiled as if she'd just made a clever joke. The main table is for the grown-ups, the ones with real careers. Wait, what is it you do again? Something with consulting. I caught my mother's eye, silently pleading for a lifeline. She met my gaze with that same disappointed expression I'd seen for years, the one that wordlessly said, if only you'd lived the life we planned for you. Investment strategy, I said under my breath, knowing full well they wouldn't bother to understand. Right, Madison said, waving off my answer like it was nothing more than static noise. Anyway, you'll love it over there. Maybe the kids can show you how to run a lemonade stand. Laughter again. Even James cracked a grin. Tyler at least looked uncomfortable, but as always, he kept his mouth shut. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding behind my composed expression, weighing whether to play along or walk away. I had two choices, make a dramatic exit or take the high road. I chose the latter. With a measured smile, I walked to the corner table and greeted my pint-sized companions. Hey there, I said warmly. A few glanced up from their screens, curiosity flickering in their eyes. As I settled into my seat, I casually took out my phone and tapped out a quick message to Marco. Showtime. Let's roll out the surprise. Across the room, Madison was launching into a speech about her recent promotion at her father-in-law's company, clearly relishing the attention. That's when the double doors opened, and Marco stepped in, followed by a line of servers dressed to impress, each holding trays of champagne. Ladies and gentlemen, Marco called out, his voice polished and commanding, welcome to Bella Luna. Tonight, we're honored to host a very special guest. Madison's smile widened. She was already preparing to stand. Our new proprietor, who recently acquired not just this establishment, but the entire hospitality group it belongs to. Please join me in welcoming Miss Olivia Mitchell. For a moment, the room went still. Glasses paused midair. Madison's expression twisted from smug delight to stunned disbelief. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Across the table, Mom clutched at her pearl necklace, her signature nervous tick. "Liv!" Tyler stammered. I rose slowly from my seat, adjusted my dress with grace. "Yes, little brother. You own Bella Luna." Madison's voice cracked with confusion, her earlier superiority gone. I accepted a glass of champagne from Marco and replied coolly, "Technically, I own the Mitchell Hospitality Group. Bella Luna is one of our more recent additions. We operate 37 restaurants up and down the East Coast." You could have heard a pin drop. Every face in the room was fixed on me, some slack-jawed, others blinking as if they were just now realizing who I was. "But how?" Mom managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a slow sip of champagne, savoring the moment like a fine wine. "That little consulting gig you all love to mock? I specialize in turning around underperforming restaurants and scaling acquisitions. I've been building my company for 10 years, while you were all too busy brushing me off." "Why didn't you say anything?" Dad barked, his face flushed. I met his eyes calmly. Would it have made a difference? When exactly have you ever cared to listen? Madison, now as red as a designer dress, looked like she might combust. James, her husband, was suddenly watching me intently, probably calculating combined value of 37 upscale properties in his head. I turned back to Marco. "Didn't my sister request that anniversary champagne? The one that runs about $2,000 a bottle." Madison's eyes widened with panic. She had ordered it, no doubt expecting to charge it to her father-in-law's account. "Put it on my bill," I said, smiling slightly. "After all, family comes first, right?" The irony in my tone didn't go unnoticed. I raised my glass and added, "To success, whatever that means to you." The remainder of the dinner unfolded like a slow, awkward ballet. Every few minutes, someone at the main table would glance my way, then quickly avert their gaze when I caught them. The expensive champagne sat nearly untouched. Apparently, it didn't taste quite as sweet when it wasn't theirs to flaunt. I remained at the corner table, but suddenly my young cousins were hanging on my every word. Emma, 12 years old and wide-eyed, leaned closer. "Do you really own all this?" I nodded, gently helping her slice up her pasta. "Yep." "Mom says you were always a quiet one." I smiled and whispered, "Sometimes the quiet ones are just building something big." She giggled. Madison, on the other hand, was unraveling. She was glued to her phone, clearly trying to dig up confirmation, Googling, texting, probably even calling her lawyer. She wouldn't find anything useful. My ownership was layered through trusts, shell corporations, and holding entities. Only my senior team knew who sat at the top. As dessert plates were being cleared, my mother finally approached. Her lipstick had been freshly reapplied, another nervous tell. "Olivia, darling," she began, voice laced with forced cheer. "Let's do lunch tomorrow. Just us girls. I feel like we haven't really talked in ages." I blotted my lips with a napkin, deliberate and calm. "Wish I could. Mom, I've got a full day, 3 board meetings, and then a flight to Miami to oversee our latest acquisition." "Miami?" She blinked in confusion. "But you never said." "I say plenty," I interrupted gently. "You just don't hear any of it." She flinched. The truth hit harder than I intended. Behind her, Dad pretended to be absorbed in his phone, though his sweaty forehead betrayed him. He was probably flashing back to every dinner where he'd scoffed at my cute little business. Then Madison stood abruptly. Her moment had arrived. Madison dragged a chair over, the sharp click of her designer heels echoing off the hardwood as she moved. She perched beside me, flashing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Liv, we should really talk about teaming up," she began, smoothing her dress. "James and I have been exploring the idea of entering the restaurant industry. Seems like the right time." Of course they were. Now that the money was obvious, the interest had magically appeared. "I'm extremely selective about who I partner with," I replied, my tone even. I only collaborate with people who are genuinely passionate about hospitality, not just chasing margins. We're family, though, Madison said quickly, reaching across the table as if to take my hand. I moved mine to my lap, feigning a casual adjustment of my napkin. Are we? I asked softly, because an hour ago I was barely worthy of a seat at your table. The blood drained from her face. Oh, come on, Liv. That was just a bit of fun. You're always so sensitive. No, I said, my voice sharpening. That wasn't a joke. That was a move. Just like the ones you've been making since we were kids. The difference is, now I can make one too. I rose from my seat, adjusting the hem of my dress with care. Turning to where Marco stood a few feet away, hands clasped neatly in front of him, I said, Marco, please let Mrs. Carter know a Sunday brunch reservation will need to be reconfirmed. We're rolling out a revised member policy. I didn't need to look at Madison to know her reaction. Her gasp rang out like a dropped glass. Those brunches were her prized social weapon, her weekly spotlight among Boston's elite. You wouldn't, she whispered, eyes wide. I wouldn't. I echoed calmly. I already did. Then I raised my voice, ensuring the entire room could hear me. As of tonight, the Carter family's preferred status at Bella Luna is under active review. James finally looked up from his phone, his face registering alarm. He depended on Bella Luna's prestige for his client meetings. Losing that perk would bruise both ego and income. And Marco, I added, please make sure Mr. Carter's business account is transitioned to our standard billing tier. No more exclusive discounts. This is absurd, Madison said, her voice rising in panic. Daddy, say something. Our father stood, adjusting his tie like a man about to enter courtroom. Olivia, let's not go too far, he said, voice tight. Madison didn't mean anything by it. We're family. We should stick together. I let out a short laugh. No warmth in it. Support each other, like when I needed startup capital and you told me to find a stable job instead. Or when Madison borrowed money for her wedding and forgot to pay it back. Because, you know, that's what family does. That was different, he said, though even he didn't sound convinced. You're right, I replied. It was different. Because back then, none of you thought I mattered. I was the quiet one, the failure in progress, the family embarrassment who wasn't living up to your expectations. I crossed the room and reached for the untouched bottle of champagne sitting in the center of the main table, the one Madison had insisted on ordering. You want to know something funny? I said, holding the bottle up. I bought this restaurant group 3 months ago. Since then, I've sat through every family dinner like an outsider, listening to you all boast about your lives, placing me at the kids' table, never once asking about mine. Silence, dense and suffocating. Even the children had set down their phones, sensing something important was happening. But now that you've seen what I built, now that it can benefit you, suddenly I matter. Suddenly I'm family again. I handed the bottle to Marco. Take this back to the cellar. I think that's enough celebration for one evening, Tyler said, standing up awkwardly. His face was flushed, not with alcohol, but something heavier. Guilt? Maybe. Livy, I should have said something earlier. About the seating, about everything. Yes, you should have, I said, meeting his eyes. But you never do you, Tyler? You just sit there and stay silent, just like I used to. Only difference is, I stopped waiting to be invited to speak. I turned toward my mother, who remained rooted beside the kids' table, her face pale, her expression unreadable. You always wanted me to be more like Madison. Louder, bolder, more driven. Well, congratulations, Mom. I became everything you asked for. I built something that cast Madison's achievements in shadow. Is that finally enough for you? She opened her mouth, but no sound came. For the first time in my life, she had no words. I picked up my purse, Hermes, not that anyone had noticed, and headed toward the entrance. Dinner's covered tonight, I said over my shoulder. Think of it as my final family donation. Olivia, wait! Madison's voice cracked like ice splitting. Please, let's talk. We can work through this. I paused at the threshold and turned back, seeing the whole family now on their feet, suddenly smaller in a room that had once seemed so large. "No, Madison," I said quietly. "We can't, because what's broken here isn't about one night or one slight. You can't undo years of disregard with a single apology. You can't erase the way you've made me feel for decades just because now I'm useful to you." "What do you want from us?" my father asked, his voice resigned and worn. "Nothing," I said. "That's the gift of success. It teaches you who you are, and it reveals who everyone else is, too." I turned to Marco. "Make sure they all get home safely. And Marco, go ahead and activate that new membership policy first thing tomorrow." As I stepped out of the restaurant, I could already hear the whispering stop behind me. By morning, the story would travel through every social circle they'd spent years trying to impress, how the quiet, forgettable Olivia Mitchell had flipped the script and the balance of power at her sister's birthday dinner. My driver was waiting. I slid into the back seat and caught my reflection in the tinted glass. Same tailored dress, same calm expression, but I felt different. Something old had finally slipped off my shoulders. My phone buzzed. Message after message. From Madison, from Mom, from Tyler, even from James. I powered it down. They would learn, as I had, that true success isn't about proximity to power. It's about what you create when no one believes in you. What you become when they are too busy underestimating you to notice you're rising. The next morning, my assistant Sarah entered my office with a stack of handwritten notes and missed call slips. "They've been calling all morning," she said, her expression careful. "James seems especially frantic about his business account." I didn't flinch. I dropped the stack straight into the shredder. "Send the new membership guidelines to every location," I said, "and make sure the Carter family is not on the preferred list." "What about the Sunday brunches?" she asked. I paused, thinking of all those weekends where Madison made sure I wasn't included, as if I was some family footnote. "Tell them those tables are reserved," I said. "For people who understand that success isn't about seating charts, it's about respect, especially for those they once looked down on." Sarah gave a small smile. She'd been with me from the very beginning, seen the late nights, the rejections, the grind. She knew what it had taken. "One last thing," I added, glancing out at the skyline. "That kid's table in the private room, get rid of it. In my restaurants, everyone deserves a seat at the main table." I sat behind my desk, sunlight pouring through the glass behind me, and reflected on what success had come to mean. My family measured it in labels and property lines. I measured it in resilience, in the ability to change things, to build from the ashes of disregard. I picked up my phone and dialed. "Emma," I said, "it's your cousin Olivia. How would you feel about learning the ropes of the restaurant business?" There was a long pause, then a small, excited "really?" "I think you might have what it takes to build something amazing someday," I said. "After all, the quiet ones, sometimes they're just focused on building something no one sees coming."